Alright, we are back after me being gone for a very long time, mostly due to a lot of things going on in my life like home construction, but also partly because I haven't been looking forward to making this video. Let's be real here, I've already talked about a lot of the much more interesting stuff, and now all that's left to talk about are the animations, some of which have technically already been covered. So with that being said, I'm just going to try to go through the video as quickly as possible so that I can get back to the heroes that actually have interesting movesets and backgrounds like Highlander or Peacekeeper. I was also considering that every time a Warden animation would be reused, I would do something along the lines of, if Ubisoft could reuse their assets, then I could reuse my videos. But that is 1, going to extend the video longer than it should be, 2, meaning that both of us have to listen to one of my very first videos, which won't be fun for either of us, and 3, very petty, but I actually don't really care much about that reason. Anyways, let's get this over with. We'll start how we always start, and that's with the stance section. We are already off to a bad start. We talked about the reused assets, so I'm going to try and not beat that dead horse, but it's really hard when we have things that don't even make sense. I dislike this stance in any scenario really, but I don't want to start that flame war in the comment section. But for this particular scenario, it just makes no sense at all. Let's look at this guard from 2 perspectives, offensively and defensively. Offensively, it doesn't seem practical to the countless other longsword guards available. It actually, and ironically if I do say so myself, runs into the same issue that Warden has with his guards. It has a very aggressive point forward guard that doesn't really make sense for her kit. The only time she stabs is when she does her light after bash. I understand from a gameplay point of view why it's good to have something like this, because it's much easier to react to her if she has to move her sword all the way back before striking. That being said, gameplay isn't the forefront of this conversation. Defensively, she has very few options as well. The longsword guard known as Long Point is actually one of the most defensive guards at a user's potential. It doesn't require that much skill and can be very difficult to defeat, especially against novices. The reason why it's so effective as a defensive tool is that it forces your opponent to distance themselves from you. The issue is that if you don't extend your sword the full length to create distance with your opponent, then they would just be able to close the gap and kill you. As you can see, the sword may be presented in the general direction of the opponent, but it doesn't present any real threat. Now this would be a little less bad if instead of their offhand just aimlessly hovering there, they would move it just a bit over and grip the blade to half sword with it. That again only makes it slightly better because they only incorporate half swording once in their entire kit, which, credit where credit is due, it is nice, but doesn't warrant making their entire stance based off of it. Also, that would require actual work to be done to make brand new animations. To really keep compounding how bad these stances are, we have to now talk about why you wouldn't want to wield one of these swords with only one hand. The short of it is that any sword that is specifically made for 2 hands is going to be extremely unwieldy in one. If you're planning on doing thrusts, your point control is going to be off. If you're planning on doing any cuts, your edge alignment is going to be very bad. It would not make any sense to try and use one of these weapons with one hand in hopes of using it effectively. Especially if a competent opponent were to get control of your blade, they could easily disarm you if you only have one hand on the sword. There are exceptions to removing your offhand from the grip and using only your primary hand. One of the obvious ones is that if you were to get in a close quarters grapple, you would use your offhand to control your opponent and use your other hand to stab the opponent. Another move that is similar to one of Fabrice's rapier techniques, the girata, which entails thrusting with the sword while stepping offline from your opponent, usually meant to dodge an attack. This isn't orthodox by any extent, but sometimes you have to break the rules if the opportunity presents itself. It can only be used in specific times, and it doesn't guarantee a fight-ending injury. Both of the examples I have given you show no reason to have a dedicated guard to use only one hand. Finally, one last point to make. I promise we'll move on from stances after this. She passes her sword to her offhand with each guard switch. That is just not good, because there is not much space on the grip to begin with, and gauntlets severely hinder the dexterity of the user's fingers. You run the risk of fumbling your sword and losing it. It makes no sense to do it, especially since longsword techniques have been created to work with your body limitations without compromising your grip. This means that you can strike from either side of your body without having to lift your palms off the handle. Now, there are weapons that you can swap your offhand and your strong hand, but it's usually much longer, like pole arms or axes, not something like a sword. I get that they did this so that they would only have to make 2 animations and then just mirror them, but it still needs to be mentioned. Finally, we could get past the beginning part of this video and move on to the actual attack animations. For starters, we have the light attacks. I'm going to be honest, these are extremely similar to Warden, so I would just recommend watching that video. The short of it is that they are fine. I feel like the footwork here is worse than Warden somehow though, but I can't say for sure. The one light attack that caught my eye was the opener top light. She does that cut with only one hand on the sword. You definitely won't get that much edge control with one hand, and that cut will be sloppy at best. That cut is then followed up by mostly proper technique for some reason, also of which was taken from Warden. Next, the heavy attacks from neutral. They also seem to be very similar from Warden, so I mean, they aren't bad, except for the top heavy finisher. That one reminds me of Highlander's dodge forward heavy, and it's just really bad. The guard is left open, her head is defenseless, and the sword is on the floor. Even if it made contact, the edge alignment is probably very bad. Next, we have sprint and a heavy attack. This move is so freaking anime, it hurts. Reverse grip, spinning attack, looking away. What this move is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever seen. At no point in its bumbling, anachronistic demonstration was it even close to anything that could be considered rational sword fighting. Everyone who has witnessed this is now dumber for having seen it. I award it no points, and may God have mercy on its soul.
Okay, a simple wrong would have done just fine, but...
Next up, we have the bash. The base bash is actually not that bad. It's just a quick backhand, and honestly, a really solid backhand is pretty strong. You are hitting with the knuckles, and if you get a good swing, it can feel like a hard sucker punch. I think it's in character with Warmonger, and it's fine. The fully charged bash, on the other hand, is a big meme. You completely expose yourself for a good second or so, in which you could definitely get injured from your opponent. I don't care how strong your backhand is, it could not be worth trading with someone else's sword. After your bash makes contact with your opponent, it then gives you two options, a light or a heavy. The light is Warden's emote where he stabs the air. I'm pretty sure I made a joke about that in one of my Warden analysis videos about how this should be in his movesets, but it's too much work to go look for that right now. It's actually not a bad lunge, it's got a lot of reach, and it seems plausible. As for the heavy attack, it flows really well with the bash and it looks fluid, but the idea that you could pull off a spinning attack like that is a bit far-fetched. It didn't need the spin, and it could have been done from a stationary position. Besides spinning and the cut being overly telegraphed, it doesn't look bad, I suppose. Next, we have the forward dodge heavy, and she spins and wildly flails her sword over her head. I would give her points in the fact that she's using both of her hands, but then I would be giving points for the bare minimum of basic sword fighting. Next, we have the side dodge heavies. These I want to like, but I have no reason to vouch for them. Again, we are seeing both hands in use, but the footwork isn't there and the angles seem weird. It's like a golf swing, but it doesn't look like a proper rising cut. Now we can take a look at the parries, and they're exactly the same as Warden's parries. Granted, they make a lot of sense and they work in a variety of situations, so I don't see any reason for them to change that. Finally, her parry punish where she half swords, truly the best for last. A completely unique move, it looks plausible, it uses historical form, and it looks well implemented. The only issue I have is where she takes a 5-meter walk and then ejects them off the sword. Especially when she ejects them off the sword because she does this weird kick thing. I don't know. Either way, it's not that big. That's it for this one. Much shorter because I didn't want to be redundant from what I said on the Warden's moveset. That video still exists. You can go see it if you want to learn more about it. Otherwise, not much else to talk about. With this done, all that's left is to finish up Gladiator, and then I can start talking about other heroes that are interesting. Most likely not Griffin, because I don't think there's much interesting to talk about with him. I don't know, maybe we'll see. Maybe I will make a video. If you like this video, please hit the like button. It costs you nothing and it helps get the videos to others. If you like videos like this, then please hit the subscribe button and the bell icon, and then you can know when the next videos are going to be coming out. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or the occasional general remarks if I'm still alive or not, go ahead and leave them down below. As always, thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Peace.